Hi, I'm Haley B. Miller, and this is Ohio Politics Explained, a podcast where you give us 15 minutes and we give you all the news you need to sound smart and impress your friends. Welcome back to Ohio Politics Explained. Today, we'll break down what the end of the government shutdown means for Ohio. We'll also check in on the governor's race and dive into religious alternatives for health insurance. Joining me today is Jesse Balmer.
Thanks for having me, as always.
First, the big headline of the week. The shutdown is over. Congress reached a deal this week to fund most of the federal government through January and spend more on food assistance through September of next year. The bill doesn't extend healthcare subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, which was at the center of the shutdown to begin with. Most Democrats, including in Ohio, opposed it because of that. Former Senator Sherrod Brown, who's running for U.S. Senate in 2026, called it a bad deal. But this hopefully means that things will stabilize for the 1.4 million Ohioans who get SNAP benefits.
Yeah, I think that's really been the headline and the main human impact, especially in Ohio, where we have fewer federal workers. Obviously, you have giant places like the NASA Center and Wright-Patterson, where there are a lot of federal employees. But when you're looking for the impact on the average Ohioan of this shutdown, it really was on SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. Like you said, 1.4 million people in Ohio rely on this for food supplements, and it has been really up in the air. And I think it's even been challenging because there's been a number of court decisions, and then Ohio's going to release money or releasing partial money. So there's just been a lot of confusion about what was happening.
Yeah, it's been a mess. Ohio did start issuing partial benefits to SNAP recipients this week, but as of recording, it's still TBD when people will get their full benefits and how exactly these payments are going to work now, since some money has already gone out.
Yeah, I saw in national reporting that they were hoping to reopen midweek or within 24 hours for most states because it is faster to give out full benefits than to calculate this partial benefit plan. But it wasn't really clear which states might get held up and why that might be. So even in the meantime, there was a lot of discussion about what Ohio should be doing if the federal government doesn't go forward on this. There was some food bank money that the governor and legislative Republican leaders put forward, and then Democrats were upset that we weren't using the rainy day fund for some of this assistance. So it really has been quite the back and forth over this particular benefit.
Yeah, for sure. And another part of the shutdown bill threw Ohio a bit of a curveball. Congress voted to ban most hemp products and close the loophole that allowed Delta 8 to get so popular. Right now, Ohio lawmakers are trying to finalize a bill to regulate hemp and tweak the state's marijuana program. We don't know yet what that bill is going to look like. I think we're going to see an update next week, but the federal ban is definitely changing the conversation.
Yeah, and even just going back, Governor Mike DeWine said that he wanted to ban these products, was very concerned about them looking like candy or being marketed like candy. Like you said, this has been kind of a gray market since the 2018 Farm Bill. And so DeWine tried to unilaterally block this from happening. That got overturned by a judge. So then state lawmakers were looking at it, and now we have a federal ban, but the ban isn't going to take effect for another year. So ostensibly we need some policy in between times. And I think state lawmakers are planning to be done for the rest of the year after next week, as far as sessions go and voting on types of bills. So we have a short period of time to kind of figure out what they want to do as a stopgap measure.
Right. And the latest version of this bill, which is Senate Bill 56, would create brand new dispensaries specifically for hemp. It would basically create a regulatory structure similar to what we have for marijuana. But House Speaker Matt Huffman said this week that while details are still coming together in terms of what the bill will look like, he doesn't expect them to create a brand new framework for something that is poised to be illegal in a year.
Yeah, that's definitely a position that you find yourself in when you're state lawmakers and then the federal lawmakers do something the week before you were planning to act. So obviously the federal law is going to trump whatever Ohio does here, but it will be interesting to see what the final form of that bill is, which also has a lot to do with marijuana and like dispersing funds to the host communities who've been waiting on this money for quite some time.
Yeah, another thing that they've been working on for a while. Our next topic is the Ohio governor's race. With the November 4th election behind us, all eyes are now on 2026 and who will replace Governor Mike DeWine. We saw some pretty interesting endorsements in the race this week. Former Governor Bob Taft said he's backing Vivek Ramaswamy after endorsing Sherrod Brown in 2024. Former DNC chair Jamie Harrison threw his support behind Amy Acton, who is the only Democrat in the race, at least right now. What is going on with Tim Ryan?
That's a great question. Tim Ryan, former Ohio congressman who ran for Ohio Senate against J.D. Vance in 2022, obviously lost that race, has been considering a run for governor for quite some time. His supporters say that he is a stronger candidate for the Democratic nod than Dr. Amy Acton, who does not have political experience, but has obviously a lot of experience in public health, and people know her name from the COVID-19 pandemic. And so Ryan said that he would make a decision by the end of September. Obviously, we're here in November and don't have a decision yet.
And this gap has allowed Acton to really gather a lot of support, you know, Harrison's endorsement being case in point. And then on the Republican side, we haven't had any threat of a primary against Ramaswamy since last spring before Attorney General Dave Yost dropped out of the race.
This race got started very early. Amy Acton got into the race in January. Vivek Ramaswamy jumped in February, obtained President Donald Trump's endorsement on the same day that he announced his gubernatorial bid. And then Ramaswamy was able to clear the field of people, like you said, Dave Yost, the current state attorney general, also Jim Tressel, Ohio lieutenant governor and former Ohio State football national championship winning coach. And so Ramaswamy really has a clear path on the GOP side, whereas there's still this question on the Democratic side. And you'll have some people say that Democratic primaries or primaries in general are a good thing. You get to vet your candidates, particularly if one of the candidates has not run statewide previously. But you're also spending a lot of money, and Ramaswamy is going to be well-funded in this race. So are you fighting each other when you should be fighting against Ramaswamy?
And you mentioned Trump's endorsement, which initially came last spring, but didn't Trump just endorse him again or like re-up his endorsement?
Yeah, that was very interesting. On like Friday evening, afternoon, would put out a post just saying that he really endorses and supports Ramaswamy still. It's possible that this was put out because of kind of the rumblings and uncertainty on the Democratic side. It's also possible it was put out to kind of shore up Republican conservative support of Ramaswamy. Or it's possible Donald Trump just wanted to throw a nod to his guy on a Friday night.
That's fair. Our final topic is healthcare sharing ministries, a religious alternative to health insurance. The Ohio House passed a bill this week that would make it easier for people to enroll in these programs. I honestly had never heard of this until your story published. Explain how it works.
Yeah, so healthcare sharing ministries have actually been around for a while, and I definitely learned more about them in covering this story. Obamacare kind of allowed these organizations to exist. And if you think of it as the equivalent of like passing the hat in church if someone had broken a bone or something like that, but on a much larger scale. So people pay into this nonprofit, and then the nonprofit distributes that money to various members who need healthcare needs. This is not health insurance, but many people use it as an alternative to health insurance and are not insured.
So how does this bill bolster these programs or make life easier for people who want to use them?
Yeah, so the bill does a number of things. One is it treats them as like religious nonprofits under the law instead of insurance agencies, so wouldn't have to follow as many of like the rules and regulations, making sure that that aligns with the federal policy. It also would allow college students who have a requirement to have health insurance to enroll in classes to say, I have this like healthcare sharing ministry instead of health insurance, and that would be okay. And then also just like as far as taxes go, I believe they'd be able to like deduct or, it would help with the tax burden of people who participate in these programs.
Interesting. So was this controversial at all? I wasn't watching session this week.
Yeah, so it was divided. There were certainly a number of Democrats who were opposed to this particular piece of legislation. Representative Desiree Timms from the Dayton area says that these organizations can be deceptive, that they don't cover all of the bills of people. People might think that they're health insurance, but they're not like required to accept everyone or required to cover every bill in the same way that your health insurance might. And so, was just concerned about like the transparency of some of these nonprofits. And there have been some that have been bad actors, and people have, sued or gone to the Ohio Attorney General over unpaid medical bills.
And one more thing before you go. The Trump administration asked the Supreme Court this week to throw out the conviction of former Cincinnati City Councilman P.G. Sittenfeld. Trump already pardoned Sittenfeld, but Sittenfeld said the pardon didn't address the, quote, collateral consequences of his conviction, including a $40,000 fine.
Yeah, I think this case is really interesting for the future of public corruption cases, including one that I followed pretty closely with former House Speaker Larry Householder.